Welcome into a somewhat later edition of the last Saturday in August CRN. For those of you that realize that we're only on CRN Live, thank you very much for joining us, first off. Second of all, the reason why we're only on CRN Live, not on the radio as well, is because of college football beginning, and let's face it, college football rules here in the South. So, contractual obligations, early kickoffs, blah, 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 blah. You get the whole story, right? Okay. I'm Steve West. Matt Nicholson right there. How are you this morning? Yeah, I imagine. Okay, good deal. You might notice some slight changes in the overall production value of this. Shouldn't be too terrifically different. And the other good news about this is we really don't have a time limit, except for what we have to do later on today, which does bring up the question there, Matt. What do you got going on later today? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it should. And the reason why we're kicked off, our flagship station happens to be a Georgia affiliate, and their game against Clemson, which I would have thought would have been a really high profile game, they're getting the 11 o'clock kick Central Time? Yeah. Yep. But hey, that's the way it is, and hopefully we won't have too many of those throughout the course of the rest of the season. That's what we're hoping for anyway. All right, so let's get into it here. Again, no radio this week, but we're going to soldier on. We're talking schedules, more schedules. Silly season continues to affect things as we're approaching the end of 2024. Got a short track defying the man. I can't wait to get to that. We were going to try and get to that last week, but we ran out of time. We'll get to it this week. They get the backing, by the way, of another branch of the man. It's pretty funny. Indycar is changing their restart procedures. Remember what happened with Joseph Newgarden? Yeah, they fixed it, or they think they did. And that's far from all of it. So let's talk about this here. Since we talked last Friday's Xfinity Series race at Daytona on last week's show, let's go to the Cup Series race at Daytona last Saturday evening. A milestone reached, so pretty cool there. The answer to a trivia question of who actually was the driver who got the legendary Wood Brothers Racing number 100 in the win slate. That answer is Harrison Burton. Got to admit, I don't think I had that on my bingo card. This also, by the way, puts the cherry on top of a Sunday that, well, it's had its ups and downs for one Jeff Burton and Harrison as well. They found out earlier this year, Jeff and Harrison, that father and son, he was going to be out of the number 21 at the end of the year. Josh Berry slated to take that car over in 2025. But again, Harrison gets his first Cup Series win, gets the team its 100th win, so sweet, sour, got to take it all together, I guess. Burton wins, being Daytona. The rest of the top 10 is kind of interesting. Kyle Busch second, Christopher Bell third, Cody Ware fourth. Certainly would not have picked that. Ty Gibbs in the top five. Rest of your top 10, Bubba Wallace, Parker Retzlaff. We'll get back to that. Brad Keselowski, Daniel Hemrick, and Chris Buescher. So we get us another playoff lock. And that means 13 of the 16 spots are spoken for. Harrison Burton being that 13 seed. That brings us the battle from 14 on down as to who might get into the playoffs. Martin Truex Jr.'s in there, 58 over the cut line, not locked in, but looking pretty good. Less comfortable, Ty Gibbs 39 over. Chris Buescher is, 21 over. And then sitting under the cut line, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain in that order. They need to perform well in order to point their way in, but it's still possible. And the reason I mentioned Martin Truex Jr. is mathematically he's not locked in. Remember that. So all of these slots could change, 14, 15, and 16. So at this point in time, I'm looking ahead on this. I mean, it's Darlington. You automatically kind of put your eyes towards two drivers. If you're talking about the win, you're talking about Denny Hamlin, maybe Kyle Larson. But Martin Truex Jr. is really good at Darlington. He knows how to take care of his equipment. He knows how to take care of his tires. So I would say as long as he just has a nice solid day, he's solid. He's good.
I think I seen the scenario where he finishes
Sure. I mean, obviously anything could happen, and things beyond his control. But if left to his own devices, Martin Truex Jr. should be able to get above that line. Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs is still that young kid, but he does seem to have a pretty good head on his shoulder. Okay. Where where would you go from here? Um, you think Ross Chastain's got a better chance than Busher? Okay. All right. So between Busher, Wallace, and Chastain, you're going Chastain. Okay. Interesting. Let's turn our attention to Sunday. Formula One got done with their August break. The Dutch Grand Prix. Lando Norris, your pole sitter, had a bad start, allowing Max Verstappen to take the lead. Usually that means he gets the win. Usually. Not this time. Norris took advantage of a mid-race slump by Verstappen, who just couldn't seem to keep the car under him. Norris retakes the lead, rolls on to the win, ultimately stretches it out, and this is a race record gap at the end. 22.89 seconds between first and second. Exactly. Verstappen did recover enough to finish runner-up. Then you got Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz making up the top five. Sergio Perez sixth, trailed by George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Pierre Gasly, and Fernando Alonso in the top 10. Verstappen still leads the points, 295 to 225 over Lando Norris. 70 points, not an impossible thing, especially the way that those two are running, but it's still a big hurdle. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. We'll keep an eye on it. We are, by the way, hearing that Matt's having a hard time being heard on the YouTube feed, so we'll keep an eye on that and keep working on it. 295 to 225, as we mentioned. Charles Leclerc is in third, 192. Ferrari is just way too inconsistent. So I'm having a hard time figuring out whether Charles Leclerc can even hold on to that spot, because Oscar Piastri, who's Lando Norris's teammate, sitting at 179 and coming quick. Carlos Sainz 172. Lewis Hamilton has really started to pick it up. He's at 154. Sergio Perez 139. George Russell 122, and then you drop all the way down to ninth and 10th. Fernando Alonso 50, 24 for Lance Stroll. Constructors' Cup tightens up. Red Bull's lead over McLaren is down to only 30. 434 to 404. This is going to be a big storyline from now through the end of the year. Ferrari's at 370. Again, inconsistency, I think, is going to doom them to stay there, because Mercedes is not, they're not really a challenge. 276. It looks like they're going to be just all by themselves, because you go 370 to 276, so that's almost 100 points between third and fourth. And then you drop all the way down to 74 for Aston Martin. So Mercedes is in fourth, period, end of sentence. VCarb's got 34. Haas F1 remains at 27. That's going to be a battle to watch. Alpine, once in a while, shows a heartbeat, and then they disappear again. They've got 13. Williams has 4. Sauber remains holding down the cellar, not one single point. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not really confident they can get one. So that leaves that. Craftsman Truck Series getting a rare Sunday race at the famed Milwaukee Mile. First race of the playoffs for them, and when it was over, no driver locked themselves into the second round. Lane Riggs, surprising the field, claims his first win in Truck Series competition. Nice for him, son of former... I know. Yeah, we're going to get back to that too. Son of former NASCAR driver Scott Riggs claimed the lead from Ty Majeski with 53 laps remaining and kept a pretty calm head. Was able to claim the win by a pretty comfortable 1.5 seconds. That marks 2 races in 2 days for NASCAR to get a first-time series winner. Majeski second, Christian Eckes third, Nick Sanchez, Taylor Gray, Tyler Ankrum, Corey Heim, Daniel Dye, Ben Rhodes, and Matt Crafton making out the top 10. And after race 1 of the playoffs, as I noted again, nobody's locked into round 2. Christian Eckes leads the way, 16 points up on Ty Majeski. The bottom side is what we really kind of pay attention to. The 2 drivers on the hot seat, they're Ben Rhodes and Rajah Caruth. Grant Enfinger is not feeling all that good. He's the 8th seed. He's 2 points up on Ben Rhodes. Ben Rhodes is only 4 points up on Rajah Caruth. We'll keep an eye on that. It's the potential for movement there is just way too much for us to even try to figure this thing out. So we're not gonna. IndyCar taking center stage next. Grand Prix of Portland after being so ticked off at his own teammate the week before. Will Power, a lot happier after the race in Portland after all. He won it. Power started the race on the front row, had the car to grab the lead, hold off the rest of the field, having a comfortable 9-second lead at the end. It was Alex Palou that was that distant second. The teammate that Will Power was so mad at, Joseph Newgarden, he got third. Trailed by Colton Herta, Marcus Ericsson, Scott McLaughlin, Santino Ferrucci with another good run for him. Graham Rahal and Kyle Kirkwood, easy for me to say. With 3 races left, Alex Palou with a big but not insurmountable lead over Will Power in the standings. It's 484 to 430 with 3 races to go. Yeah, Will Power is going to have to do a whole lot more of what he did at Portland. Uh-huh. There are mathematical chances for Colton Herta at 417 and Scott McLaughlin with 396 and Scott Dixon at 383, but especially even for 6-time Scott Dixon at 101 points, everything's going to have to go perfect. Everything's just got to be fantastic this weekend and when we get to Nashville, and everybody in front of him, not just one, but all 4 are really going to have problems. Yeah, and I'm just not counting on that. All right, so that brings us to the rookie side of things, and this is almost done as well. Linus Lundqvist with all but a stranglehold on the rookie standings. 216 to 152 for Kiffin Simpson. Nolan Siegel's up to 124. Christian Rasmussen 114. And then Chevrolet expanding out their lead in the engine manufacturer standings over Honda. It's now sitting at 1,236 to 1,110. Busy weekend this weekend. All right, so let's get into it. Here's your schedule this weekend. Xfinity Series getting things rolling at Darlington. That's why I'm wearing this shirt right here. In case you can't see it on camera, I'll try and give you a better shot later. It is the Sport Clips, Haircuts, VFW, Help a Hero 200. That'll be shortened in some way, shape, or form by USA and MRN Radio. They have the coverage, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Central Time. IndyCar back into action tonight. Oval track race, Wisconsin. It is the High V Milwaukee Mile 250. That's race number 1 of a doubleheader weekend. It'll be on Peacock only if you want the visuals. And IRN Radio starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central Time. And I think that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back for IndyCar and why we're switching from NBC to Fox next year.
Probably so, because it doesn't make any sense to me to run one race on Saturday night at 5 p.m. and turn around and run race number 2 doubleheader at 1:30 the next day.
Yeah. And not have, and I mean, what the heck are you putting it on streaming only for? What else? What's your competition? College football? Certainly you could put it on USA. You'd be all right with that.
Well, I guess so.
Join it in progress. Join it in progress if it, starts before the Xfinity Series race is done. I don't get it. I don't get it. Sunday morning, head to Italy for the Pirelli Grand Prix of Italy. It's on the famed Monza course. This is that very fast. I like this course, truth be told. 11 turns, 3.3 miles long. Race is set to air on ESPN Live, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. I don't know why I said 8 p.m. IndyCar's second race of the weekend, race number 2 of the High V Milwaukee Mile 250 gets rolling 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Central Time, USA and IRN Radio. So at least you get visuals that you can access better. Sunday evening. Yeah, Sunday evening. Remember, Labor Day weekend. takes to Darlington for the Cookout Southern 500 USA and MRN Radio, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central. And then finally, the NHRA runs the finals on Labor Day itself. They're in Indianapolis Raceway Park. It's the historic Toyota NHRA US Nationals. Remember, we talked about this a few weeks ago that Toyota signed the title sponsorship deal on that. Finals begin on Fox Sports 1 at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time, and then it'll switch to the main network, Fox, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. The only series that we cover that is in season that isn't racing this weekend, it's the Craftsman Truck Series. So busy weekend here, and we should... I haven't looked at the schedule, so I don't even know who Georgia's got next weekend. But we're hoping we're going to be back on radio. All right. Matt's looking it up right now.
They have the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles.
Got only 1 p.m. Central. Okay, so we might be on early because pregame's a 4-hour thing.
That means pregame will start at 9 a.m.
Yeah, we may be going early next week. We might be a 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. show next week. Fair warning, folks. And unless I miss my guess, I'm going to be in studio by myself.
I will be via phone.
And John, with college football season going and the TV things that he's got to do, yeah, I'm going to be in studio all by myself. Talk about needing patience. Oof. Let's go ahead and while John continues to work on some technical situations, we're going to take a break and gather our thoughts here. And when we come back, we're going to start talking about schedules because NASCAR finally gave us the 2025 schedules for Cup, Xfinity, and Trucks. We'll break them all down, and there are some surprises to talk about. So we're going to get into that when we come back. Thank you very much for joining us on this CRN Live, a YouTube-only version of the Championship Racing Network. We'll be right back. welcome back. We're still trying to figure that out. John is going through all different kinds of hoops, trying to figure out what it is that's got Matt in kind of a weird situation, volume-wise. Because the funny thing is we can hear him, but for some reason the connection maybe not working on YouTube totally. So we'll continue to work on that, and hopefully it will get resolved. I'll just put it that way. Again, we're doing this from home in case you hadn't noticed. My little collection back behind me there, and it's because of college football. That's the way it goes. We're not on radio this week. All right, noted this on the show last week. Let's deal with this first. RCR filed the appeal against their overtly aggressive driving style that got Austin Dillon the win at Richmond. But NASCAR didn't care for it, and they stripped him of the playoff implications. The final appeals officer heard that on Monday, upheld the decision that revoked the playoff benefits. National Motorsports Appeals Officer Bill Mullis said in Monday's ruling that the data indicated, quote, that more than likely a rule violation did occur, unquote.
I don't think there's no more than likely to that a rule violation did occur.
I just like how he put it. He upheld NASCAR's decision. Dillon could still make the playoffs if he wins Sunday evening at Darlington, which you and I talked about Wednesday during crossed flags and said he's got like a 0.001% chance or something like that. I mean, as long as he starts, he's got a chance, but realistically, no. But if he did, according to the ruling, he would not get any bonus points from the Richmond win. Some things we already knew: Busch Clash, Bowman Grace, things like that. We'll get back to the schedule in a second. So yeah, Austin Dillon could win this weekend. We'll just say it, and he could make the playoffs. No bonus points from Richmond, no benefit at all from Richmond, even though he still career-wise gets credit for the win. It's strange.
Yeah.
It's a strange kind of ruling.
Very.
I'm not sure I understand all the machinations of it, other than the fact that I know, for example, NASCAR's got this long-standing thought that if they hand the trophy to the guy in victory lane, they want to try and make that stand at all costs.
Well, yeah, I get that and I see that, but if you go and look through the ranks, not just within the region, but short track racing across the United States, let's use that as a reference point.
Okay.
Whether it be dirt or asphalt.
Yeah.
If, well, let's just call it for what it's worth. If you screw up and you violate the rules somehow, short track racing, whether it be dirt or asphalt, they won't hesitate to say, not so fast. They'll take the trophy in and check from you, disqualify you, and give it to place number 2, which place number 1, which then will become place number 1. So, if short tracks and regional short track racing can do that too, NASCAR can do the same thing, but they don't want to.
Yeah, that's probably about the best way to put it.
Yeah.
NASCAR doesn't want to, but at some point in time, you're going to have to put some teeth to this and make sure that if you're going to continue down this road of not allowing Austin Dillon, and one would presume everybody else following, to be able to do this, you got to put some teeth to it. And I get taking away the playoff implications and bonuses should you find another way into the playoffs.
Sure.
But are those teeth sharp enough?
I'm going to say no.
So it should be more.
They should be it should be teeth like a great white shark instead of teeth like a barn pig. That's a fair assessment.
Okay, I like that.
You know.
Yep. Take the win away totally. I mean, in other words, Austin Dillon wouldn't even have it under his career stats.
No, because the little black box in the car known as the SMT data, and
Sure.
y'all know my numbers, and you know my numbers.
I do.
Lap 407, negative 3.7 on the steering. Lap 408, same point on the racetrack, positive 33.9.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I gotcha. All right. So that was big story number one. Big story number two, we had to figure out what order it was. Just chose to go in chronological order of what happened first. So the Austin Dillon story comes first. Our second biggest story was the late week release, easy for me to say, of the 2025 NASCAR schedules. And we're going to start, obviously, because we're talking Cup news with the Cup Series. And some things we already knew. Busch Clash, Bowman Gray Stadium, when the Daytona 500 was going to happen, things like that. From there, detail time. Like this year, from Daytona to Atlanta, still in February, could be cold. It wasn't really this year, but we have seen it in the past where February in Atlanta could get downright cold. I mean, highs in the 30s.
true.
So, kind of a wild card. From Daytona, Atlanta, we start the West Coast swing and head to Coda. Somebody's actually looking at a map and realized we didn't have to make all the jump all the way from Atlanta to Phoenix.
They were listening to us.
They were listening to us, John, in case you missed it. Yeah, finally. Coda moves up to third on the slate as the series begins to head west. As I think about this is Austin, Texas. I mean, Dallas-Fort Worth area in late February, early March, they could get snow. Austin, Texas, a little less likely. So I don't mind this move. I think I might have lost Matt. Matt, work on that. Then you go from there to Phoenix and then to Vegas. So there's your West Coast swing. And it does make sense. But here's the thing. From Vegas, you come all the way back to Florida, and we run at Homestead, Miami, which moves back out of the playoffs, back to the early season slot. And then we'll wrap up the month of March at Martinsville. So Daytona, Atlanta, Coda, Phoenix, Vegas, Homestead, Miami, which is practically a cross-country trip, and then Martinsville.
Yeah.
Geographically, it does seem to make a little more sense, except for that big hop all the way back over. And this does get us through March. We should, by and large, be past any major inclement weather. Rains are one thing, but all of these are pretty temperate locations with the potential wild card of Atlanta right after the Daytona 500.
Really the only thing that I see all the way up until February, March, excuse me, the question mark would be Coda, I'd say.
You think Coda's a big question?
I'm not going to say a huge question because the simple fact of it could be right there on that line where if there's weather in the area, whether it could be rain or snow.
Yeah.
It's right there on that island.
Yeah, the further north in Texas you go, the more likely you're to get snow. Austin might get it just because, well, let's face it, everything's flat out there.
That's true.
So we'll see. April, go to Darlington, then Bristol before the Cup Series gets the one and only off weekend of the season. Think about that. Easter weekend is the only weekend that the Cup Series has off the entire year from once we get started to the end of it. It's going to be interesting. After Easter to our home track, Talladega. Then in May, they go out to Texas. That's Texas Speedway, not Coda. Kansas. All-Star Weekend at North Wilkesboro. And the All-Star Weekend will wrap up the Fox portion of the slate.
You know, you would. You would think, you know, if you're going to make that West Coast to Midwestern swing in the early part of the schedule, you would take this stuff and bump it back. But Texas and Kansas, you could put Texas and Kansas because these cars are so interchangeable now.
Yeah.
You could put Texas and Kansas I'm gonna say on the run back from Phoenix. The run back from Vegas. Excuse me.
Yeah, and just to give a little more separation, you could have gone Vegas, Kansas, Texas before coming to Homestead.
Yeah, and then make that East Coast run and right back to the Southeast.
Yeah,
Put Talladega May 11th.
I see where you're going with that, but either way, this is where they went. So after North Wilkesboro and Fox is done, we go to Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime kicks off with the tentpole race of the Coca-Cola 600. Then Nashville, Michigan, Mexico City. We talked about this last weekend, and what we had initially thought was that it was going to be, we were going to go Mexico City, Michigan, and we were thinking that's a long trek. We're not going to get that. We're going to get Michigan to Mexico City. Same trek, just in reverse. And here's the thing. You're going to go Michigan, Mexico City, Pocono.
Why?
I don't know. I hope you got more than one.
Why are we going from the upper Midwest to below the border back to the Northeast?
Yeah. Hopefully you got more than one set of trucks.
Somebody magically lost that globe all of a sudden.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Hopefully you got
Somebody, I don't know.
hopefully you got more than one driver and more than one set of trucks. That's because that's what you're going to need. Am I losing myself? Because I suddenly don't hear me. It's kind of strange. All right, so that's the Amazon Prime portion of the schedule here. TNT Sports comes in next. That'll be Atlanta. Now, we talked about that before, so we knew that TNT Sports was going to take over in Atlanta. They're going to get a 10-pole race in the Chicago Street Race. Then you go out to Sonoma, so back-to-back street road course racing. Go from Sonoma all the way back across the country to Dover before we head to Indianapolis for the Brickyard 400. So you get two highlight races on TNT. Chicago Street Race, which, again, it's one of those curiosity things. This is year number 3, too. So our curiosity has a little bit to do with, are we going to go back for a 4th year? And then, of course, the Brickyard 400, which, let's face it, everybody wants to go there. And this year, that was an exciting race.
Yeah, it definitely was not bad for sure. But out of the early part of the schedule, this part of the schedule so far, from a broadcasting standpoint, I'm gonna say TNT has got the winning hand right now.
Oh, I would agree. Over Amazon Prime, I would agree with that. Absolutely.
I would dare say TNT may have a slight edge over Fox.
Over Fox, okay, that's interesting.
I would dare say because look how Atlanta has evolved into. I'm going to use the term how Atlanta has evolved into a highlight reel.
Yeah. Okay.
Making good finishes, and then you got Brickyard Portland that speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And then from a viewership standpoint of how people will zone in and look and tune in to watch the Chicago park race and street race.
Sure.
Park.
Oh yeah, and
So
we're gonna be curious about Mexico City too.
Their 3 out of 5 is not bad in my opinion from a viewership standpoint. So
I would certainly say for year 1, TNT can look at that schedule and go, yeah, we're in pretty good shape.
yeah,
I would agree with you wholeheartedly there. So then you get NBC Sports. They take over at Iowa. And then go from there to Watkins Glen, Richmond with their run one race in 2025. Yep. Mexico City technically takes the place of what would have been the spring Richmond race. So Richmond down to one event. That wraps up the regular season at Daytona. So the final few races of the regular season, once again, Iowa, Watkins Glen, Richmond, and Daytona. And Daytona gets back into that normal stretch. Again, this year kind of weird because NBC had the Olympics coverage and it shoved everything with that 2-week break in the middle there. Labor Day weekend, we'll see the Cup Series playoffs kick off once again at Darlington. And then we go to Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway with Bristol making up the round of 16. Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway makes it into the playoffs. Good thing or bad thing?
I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't like it because when you look at how the schedule is, how this lineup part of the playoff schedule is, you got 1, to 3, technically 4 flat tracks.
Yeah.
Technically 4 flat tracks.
Yeah, because we're going to get to the rest of them here in a minute.
Yeah. I don't like it.
Okay.
I would have out of a, because this specific one event is still yet to be ran. I would have given Watkins Glen another shot in the playoffs before I changed that right there.
Keep Watkins, put Worldwide Tech after Iowa and put Watkins Glen in there between Darlington and Bristol.
I would have left it.
Okay. I don't mind your way of thinking, by the way, because I like Watkins Glen. I've made no bones about that. Round of 12 will take us up to New Hampshire. New Hampshire moves back into the playoffs. Kansas is in there. The Charlotte Roval makes up the last race in the round. So we'll get back to what's being switched around here in just a minute. New Hampshire and Kansas. Okay, there's your flat track situation again, New Hampshire. Kansas, we're used to them being in there. The Charlotte Roval, we're used to them being in the playoffs, but they trade out of the round of 8 to go to the round of 12.
Yeah, they really just bump up one race.
Yeah, I don't have a real big problem with that. What is the trade that Charlotte makes with, because that brings us to the round of 8. The first and the third race in that round we're used to. That middle race, we're not. Vegas, Talladega goes to the round of 8, middle race there, and then, as usual, wrapping up the round of 8 at Martinsville. Vegas, Talladega, Martinsville.
I mean, you're gonna bump Talladega up from race number 4 in the playoffs. You're gonna bump Talladega from race 4 to race 8.
Mm-hmm.
My dream may be starting to evolve into fruition here. Because you're one race away from being the final round of the round of 8, and you want to talk about pure chaos. I would love pure chaos.
Heck, for that matter, you're 2 races away from having Talladega host the championship.
As a title race. And I'm sorry, and if somebody wants to argue with me, I'll go die on this hill, and I will set the tent up, put the flagpole on the ground, kick the cooler up, light a bonfire, and kick my chair up and sit there.
Sure.
What would it be any difference than Daytona ends a regular season finale versus the Talladega ends of the season?
And
there's no difference.
If that happens, let's face it, the Daytona 500 is always going to be the kickoff to the year. So you kick off at Daytona and you wrap at Talladega.
I would do it.
There's something of a symmetry there. By the way, next year we know, and we told you this already, you know this, Phoenix is going to be the championship weekend, and that'll be the first weekend in the month of November. There are things about this schedule that I could complain about, but it's not going to do any good because it'd be basically beating your head up against a brick wall. It's done. It's set in stone. NASCAR is going to do it whether we like it or not, or whether we like all of it, or whether we like some of it and not all of it. Doesn't matter. This is the schedule. We like it. We lump it. It is what it is. Cup Series, we have noted that they have raced out of the United States before, twice in the modern era in 1972. Both of those races taking place in Canada. I should say before the modern era of 1972. Canada, 1952, Stamford Park, Niagara Falls. That's on the Canadian side. 1958 at the Canadian Expo Center in Toronto. Those were points races. Obviously, we've had exhibition races in Japan and Australia. But for modern era, which again is considered to be 1972 to now, this is the first time that the Cup Series has raced 4 points outside of the United States, going to Mexico City.
Yeah, if I had to grade the overall Cup schedule, I'm gonna have to give this Cup schedule a C.
Yeah, I mean, it started off kind of making sense. They had the geographical side of things kind of set. Daytona, Atlanta, COTA, then out there but then it kind of started to go off the rails when you had to go Vegas all the way to Homestead, Miami. And again, Michigan, Mexico City, Pocono.
I'm going to, and in the August 31st edition of Call My Shot, I'm going to go ahead and say now, if a gentleman we're going to talk about here in just a little bit, if he's not walking into the playoffs as the regular season leader with 4 wins, I will be absolutely shocked.
I would agree. I would agree with you wholeheartedly.
I'll be absolutely shocked.
As far
maybe
as
five.
yeah, it's possible. I won't deny that. Again, the race in Mexico City, it's going to be on the F1 track, just like COTA. They're going to run the full track that Formula One runs on, the Formula One version of Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, 17 turns, 2.67 miles long, goes through the old baseball stadium in downtown. It's a beautiful course. It's going to be real interesting. And the road course hot shots, notably SVG, they're going to be out in force. And then there's the question of Chicago.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's done it before.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't be overly shocked if you see Jenson Button come back and run a race or two.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd be quite surprised if they're not already considering that.
With Mexico City, let me see something here.
Okay.
F1 2025. Here we go.
Looks like our sound is all the way back too. That's a good thing.
All right. I was looking to see how the logistics would line up, because when you look at that weekend when NASCAR's in Mexico City,
Mhm.
you have Formula One in Montreal. So
Okay.
I was thinking you could possibly might see some type of crossover and see some very, very, very large cannons show up to run.
Probably not. Those two races are going to
Probably.
be going
Yeah.
on pretty much at about the same time.
Yeah, it's going to clash there. But
I would check this if I were you. And this is just a curiosity on my part, but I would check and see what IndyCar is doing this weekend.
That's exactly what I'm going
They
to.
may be racing. I'm not 100% positive of that, but they may be racing as well. But yeah, it'd be an interesting crossover for them too, because there's a couple of IndyCar guys who would love to do it.
2025 IndyCar series, they're at Gateway that day.
Yeah, okay. So they're too busy. They're not going to do it either.
So you may see some. You may see. I'm gonna check this one.
Okay, which series are you talking about now?
I want to check IMSA.
Yeah. Might be a sports car guy or two come in as a ringer, because the Xfinity series is going to be down there too. Foreshadowing.
IMSA is open.
Oof. Yeah,
IMSA
we might see that.
IMSA. I mean, you could have the.
You might just see that.
Yeah.
Especially with one of those teams that's going to head down there to try and get into the race that doesn't have a charter, but is looking to really make sure that they almost definitely qualify. They're going to want to go find somebody who's really, really good at road and street course racing.
Sure.
Yeah, I could see that. As far as the street course race, we noted it, Chicago into year 3, and some people thinking that after the 3rd year, that might mean it's coming to an end. Could NASCAR continue to go street course racing in Chicago or maybe even elsewhere? There is talk about them looking at San Diego. As we've said this before, we'll say it again. NASCAR covets racing in Southern California, and apparently they're thrilled with the idea of going street course racing, and now they think San Diego might actually be the place to go to have the Southern California race. You know, again, ignoring that racetrack that they own in Fontana.
Shocker.
South of Los Angeles, San Diego. Reports from the Sports Business Journal claims an unnamed NASCAR executive All right, take that for what it's worth. Saying that NASCAR officials have looked at the city of San Diego. Neither the San Diego County Commission nor the mayor's office offered a comment on the report. NASCAR is also officially declining to comment. The Sports Business Journal itself adds NASCAR is interested in looking at cities like these four three of the four make no sense to me. Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Seattle.
I'm going to say all four make no sense to me because of the Pacific Northwest. You already go up there at that little place called Portland.
Yeah, but the Cup Series doesn't go there. Only the Xfinity Series goes.
I'm talking about this. I'm talking about the sanction. I'm referring to the sanction.
Sure, I get that. But I'm just going by the Cup Series. The only reason I say three of the four don't make sense. Seattle only makes sense geographically because the Cup Series does not go there. Could they go there? Yes, they could go to Portland. Should they go to Portland? Probably, but they don't. So geographically, if you're trying to spread it out, Seattle makes some sense. I've been to Seattle though. I don't know where the heck you're going to make a street course out of Seattle. That thing is as hilly as all get out. Same with Pittsburgh, truth be told. Baltimore, there's probably around the Inner Harbor. I could see that. Cincinnati, maybe around the football or baseball stadiums. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of experience with Cincinnati. But in the end, it just seems like if you're a person who's not a big fan of street course racing, it's beginning to look more and more like it's here to stay with NASCAR.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But if the in today's installment of if the front office would use their brains, any brain cells that they have, you have been in the Cincinnati market very, very recently, just right across the river at that little track on I-71 in Sparta, Kentucky.
Yeah. That track that's over there just gathering dust.
That's sitting there perfectly nothing wrong with.
Exactly. Tell you what, let's take a break. When we come back, Matt called this on the show last week. So we're going to give you the latest edition of This Show Called It. When we come back, thank you for checking us out on this YouTube-only version of CRN. Welcome back in. CRN live from our homes on this weekend because of college football. And here's the good news again. We don't really have a time limit. We can go as long as we'd like to, or well, until John's got to go to work. How's that? In the latest case of this show, Called It, we've had a pretty good history about calling these things ahead of time. Matt called it during our time with you last week. He said it twice more during the show, when he felt that all signs were pointing to Shane Van Gisbergen moving up to the Cup Series on a full-time basis for 2025. And as it turned out, just before the Cup Series race at Daytona, Trackhouse Racing owner Justin Marks had SVG by his side, stepped into the media center, and made it official. Trackhouse becomes a 3-car operation next year, joining the returning Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez. And after getting approval, let's make that perfectly clear, Trackhouse is going to slap the number 88 on the sides and the roof. They're pulling out a number that was last used with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Hendrick Motorsports back in 2017. So let's start there, Matt. They're going back to the number 88. Again, they got approval from Hendrick and Dale Jr. to put that number on there. Why 88? This has meaning to SVG? He's done something. All right, Matt, I'm going to say this. I can't hear you at this point in time. Hopefully the listeners and the viewers on CRN Live can hear you.
No,
Matt's going to work on that. Or John's going to work on that.
It's on Matt's side, too.
Yeah, okay. Maybe there's a mute on your side somewhere, Matt, so maybe check that out real quick.
How about now?
Hey, there we go. Okay. All right. So let me go back. Let's revisit the number 88 conversation. They get approval from Dale Earnhardt Jr., but the 80 out of all the numbers that are out there that they could have chosen, why go 88? Does this have meaning in some way, shape, or form?
To my knowledge, it does not.
Okay.
I know 97 does. Because that's the number he's ran with supercars in Australia and New Zealand.
Sure.
But I do know Justin has a really good repertoire, I guess you could say, of going to previous joggers that have run previous numbers and like, hey, I want to run this number. Do I have your blessing to run this number and continue running it? I know he did that with Carl Edwards when he put the 99 on Daniel Suarez's car.
Right.
And so I'm really not sure what the basis was on the 88, but I don't think it's a bad thing that it's coming back and he's going to run it.
No.
I was really surprised to not see 97, but so that tells me if he went and talked to Kurt about it, what did Kurt say to lead him to not go to 97?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Yeah. When asked later on in the interview back and forth where he got the charter from, Marks replied, guess. The reporter answered Stewart-Haas Racing, and Marks replied, good guess. Now, Stewart-Haas Racing has not confirmed it. It would seem to fit, and that would mean then that 2 of the SHR charters would then be sold. Obviously, the one earlier to Front Row Motorsports, and now this one maybe we're thinking Trackhouse Racing. But again, we're waiting on official confirmation to note whether or not it was an SHR charter or not. Let's see. Last week we also noted we saw 2 cars flip over at Michigan, and Daytona being Daytona, not much different. SHR driver Josh Berry, running near the front most of the night until late in the race, was kind of an innocent victim. He was leading the outside lane of a 2-line attack. Fellow Ford driver Austin Cindric was below him, and as they were barreling down the backstretch, Kyle Busch tried to get in a bump draft on Cindric, but instead got the 2-car loose. Cindric went up, collected Berry before the pair shot down to the apron, and as they got sideways, Berry's car flipped up and over onto its roof, slammed nose first into the inside wall, which lifted it up off of the pavement, slammed it back down, and continued just kind of spinning around as well. And even after the car stopped moving down the backstretch, it was still spinning a bit. Berry said after the wreck and being checked out and released from the infield care center that, yes, the wreck was a bit scary at first, but that it actually looked worse than it was. Credit to the emergency crews. They arrived on the scene very quickly. They checked on Berry, determined he was good, flipped the car over, then helped him out, and that's when he went to the infield care center. there is something to say for the safety aspect built into these Cup cars. I'll admit to that. And certainly when you're hanging upside down, you're really nothing more than a spectator in a very, very odd place. But the fact that he wasn't hurt worse than he was, I will say this, for all of the things that we could ding them when it comes to this car, the safety aspect, you cannot fault NASCAR. This car is about the safest car they've ever had.
Yeah, you could say that. There's some things that I would change on it still,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a fairly safe car. Yeah, because you see the really more the center section of the greenhouse
Sure.
where it comes into play for sure, because you've seen two cars get upside down and make sizable forcible contact on the top of the roof with asphalt and ground, and it not move a fraction of an inch,
Sure.
which is a good thing, because the last thing you want is to have a cage and a halo collapse down and you be pinned.
But let's call this as well. You and I talked about this when we showed that second shark fin on the side of the roof there. That actually could have played a bit of a factor, because these cars, that added a little bit more straight line stability with the air flowing over the car. And unfortunately, that means that some of these drivers were more than willing to try some things that they might not have tried beforehand.
Yeah, but with the way that spin happened, I think if it had been just a solo car spin by itself, I don't think you would have seen that happen. With
Okay.
Austin Cindric spinning right beside him and being
Disrupts the air enough.
disrupted the air just enough, it made a negative effect and caused a liftoff.
Okay.
It had a negative effect on the air in a way, and
All
it
right.
caused Barry's car to lift.
Okay.
But if you had a solo car spin, I don't think you would have seen that. Case in point, go back to when John Hunter Nemechek spun in almost the close same spot.
Sure.
His car stayed down fine.
Yeah.
But when you got Barry spinning side by side with Cindric, that air got disrupted in a way to where it caused a liftoff of Barry's car being the lead car.
Yeah, and NASCAR is going to sit there and they're going to do all of this research on this. And the truth of the matter is that there are just some things that you're never going to be able to stop totally, unless you want to start making these guys race around at 100 miles an hour. And we don't want to see that.
I don't care what anybody says. And again, I'll go down this hill. You cannot and will not ever completely stop cars from getting upside down in motorsports. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yep. You get more than one car out on a racetrack, there's a chance of it happening every time. Earlier in the race, they got a scary incident on pit road as well between the 11 and 99 cars. Daniel Suarez in the 99, the first driver out of the race when his car caught fire on pit road. After a round of pit stops, Suarez had gotten his car serviced. He was about to pull away when he could not get out from behind the 21 car, Harrison Burton, the eventual winner, in the pit stall in front of him. When Hamlin tried to go, he was caught behind Suarez, but they were far enough ahead to where when Hamlin's car backfired, it was sitting in Suarez's pit stall enough to where it actually caught some of the spilled race fuel from the 99 on fire. The fire spread to the overfill of the 99 car itself. Suarez said, quote, "We know that every single time we do a pit stop, we drop a little bit of fuel, and that's completely natural. Unfortunately, the 11 was leaving his pit stall right behind me because he was waiting for me to leave. His exhaust fired up the little fuel that I dropped. Because I was still parked there, it went up the back of my car where the fuel cell is and just grabbed it. And obviously, fuel being fuel, it's going to take off in a fire. And that's unfortunate because what Suarez looked like he had up until that first pit stop was a pretty stout car."
Yeah, it was. And, with that higher octane fuel that they run, it just ignites that much quicker than, your basic gasoline that makes that car.
Right. Yeah.
But, and to the, let me catch myself here. They decided they wanted to play Pitbull's Fireball after Daniel Suarez's car got caught on fire. Grow up. Grow up.
Well, that guy might find himself out of a job. Just saying.
I'm hoping he does, because we know who he is, and he's not the brightest crayon in the box.
We would agree. Yes, even producer John knows this guy. He's been in the PA booth with us and seen the gentleman. After being held in New York City, Las Vegas, in the past few years, and Nashville, this postseason awards ceremony for the NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, and Trucks is on the move again. And it going to the one place that actually makes the most sense, truth be told. They're bringing it to Charlotte. This year, the award ceremony will take place Friday, November the 22nd, Charlotte Convention Center. It'll air on a delayed basis on John's television station, the CW network. Sunday, November 24th, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. Cup Series, Xfinity Series, Craftsman Truck Series, all will be feting their awards. Several other series, ARCA Menards East and West, Whelen Modified Tour, Advance Auto Parts Weekly Series. They'll also take parts in the celebration, and getting word that the champions of the International Series, the NASCAR Series Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and Whelen Euro Series will be in attendance as well. So they're going to make it a big, big deal at Charlotte, November the 22nd. And again, you'll get to watch it on the CW network Sunday the 24th in the afternoon. To the Xfinity Series. As we noted, all 3 top NASCAR series had their 2025 schedules released. Xfinity next up. It begins, like the Cup Series does, at Daytona. Goes to Atlanta, from Atlanta to Coda to Phoenix, Phoenix to Vegas. They're going to stick with the early season Cup Series schedule by going Vegas to Homestead, Miami, and then they'll take a week off. Then they'll go to Martinsville, Darlington, and Bristol. They, unlike the Cup Series, will race on Easter weekend. Yeah. The Cup Series only in-season weekend off, Easter weekend, Xfinity, fewer races than Cup, choosing to run that holiday weekend and returning April the 19th to Rockingham. The Rock is back on a top-level NASCAR schedule. And this time, we'll see if it sticks. I say this time because it was, about 10 years ago that we saw a couple of years where the Truck Series ran at the Rock, and then nobody showed up, and boom, they were off again.
Because Andy Hillenberg and the staff that had the track ran it had a bunch of the seats on the bottom blocked off.
Yeah.
With banners.
So here's the deal. And I'll go ahead and pull the curtain off of this one as well. It will be a doubleheader weekend. Saturday afternoon is Xfinity. Friday, the Truck Series will run at Rockingham. So it is a doubleheader weekend. North Carolina fans or NASCAR fans who have been clamoring for the Rock to return to the schedule, here's your opportunity to prove that it belongs on the schedule by buying the tickets and showing up. That's the only way it's going to stay on the schedule. Because here's the thing. This track is not owned by NASCAR. This track is not owned by SMI, the 2 major track ownership groups that run effectively NASCAR. This is a third-party entity. And the only way to keep them on the schedule is to show up in force. I'm warning you right now.
If the logistics allow, that's going to be the word. If the logistics allow, I think it's time to hit up 85, Wes.
I don't have a problem with that thought. We might just have to do that. From the Rock, the next weekend, that'll be 2 races in a week, 2 races in 2 weeks for us, because the next weekend they rejoin Cup Series at Talladega. I don't mind 2 races in 2 weekends. So Cup Series at Talladega, Texas, and then another weekend off before going to Charlotte. That weekend off is that All-Star weekend. Remember, North Wilkesboro, they haven't run there. From Charlotte to Nashville, then they join the trek to Mexico City. They do not go to Michigan. Nashville, week off, Mexico City. But they do go from Mexico City to Pocono, Atlanta, Chicago, Sonoma, Dover, and Indy. August, they'll go to Iowa, Watkins Glen, Daytona, head out west from Daytona all the way out to Portland for a standalone date before they wrap up their regular season at Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway. We're already in the Cup Series playoffs at this point in time, but the Xfinity Series doesn't get done with the regular season until Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway. Then the playoffs kick off. The playoffs are going to kick off for them at Bristol, then Kansas, and then the Charlotte Roval. Round of 8 mirrors the Cup Series, Vegas, Talladega, Martinsville, before they wrap the season at Phoenix on championship weekend. The lone trek out to Portland between Daytona and Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway is interesting. But, yeah, I'd say the headliner, I'd say the headliner's got to be Rockingham.
Yeah. And if you look too, Bristol picks up a second Xfinity race,
Sure.
and Darlington loses one Xfinity race.
Yeah, that's true. They do.
So I think the way it looks, because you know that ISC is a ISC. I still call it ISC. I'm going to continue to call it ISC.
Sure.
They're promoting the Mexico City race, so that second, the Richmond race went to Mexico City.
Right.
So, and the second Bristol race came from New Hampshire because New Hampshire's off.
Right.
So the second uh, the worldwide tech race came from Michigan because Michigan's off.
Yeah, it is. Okay. I
So
I mean, yeah, we could sit here and nitpick, but I'm just happy Rockingham's back. And by the way, for those of you that are
Yep.
talking about on television, CW has all of the races for the Xfinity Series next year. That's why we didn't sit there and split it up amongst who was broadcasting, because CW Network's got the entirety of the Xfinity Series rights next year.
Yep.
All right, 3 teams got smacked with L1 level penalties following last weekend's race at Daytona. The penalties handed out to the 27 of Jordan Anderson Racing, the car driven by Jeff Burton, the 28 of RSS Racing, driven by Kyle C. Officials discovered unapproved changes to body panels in pre-race inspection. So the penalty penalties mean that each driver's been docked 20 points, 5 playoff points if they make it. And the respective crew chiefs, who are Shane Whitbeck, Joe Williams, Case Kallenbach, each got fined $25,000. The rules cited by NASCAR 14.4.A, 14.4.11.C and D. This regards body and rear bumper cover extensions that are designated for super speedway races in alphabetical order, Atlanta, Daytona, and Talladega. These are specific body panels set aside for these particular races. What would you do? I mean, are you flaring them out? What do you think they didn't get into specifics about what they did.
It's gotta be some type of flaring modification to it. It's gotta be.
Yeah, because it doesn't fit.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, just because at that point in time it would not fit the template. I mean, that's the only thing we can think. Okay,
right.
Got it.
And there was some Xfinity news that just came out from Darlington that I saw. They just released. So the third calling car is officially filled. That seat is going to be taken by Christian Eckes next year.
Oh, okay. So he's going to get a.
He's going to the 16 car. He's going to the 16 car.
Okay.
So from where because they stated too that there's zero talk about a fourth Xfinity car. So it looks like the car that SVG is in this year is going to transform back to the 10 car with Daniel Dye going to it next year.
Okay. All right. Well, seats are filling up. You don't have a seat now. Better grab one quick because they're going away. And that's a warning to Harrison Burton. He needs to find a gig. That'll bring us to the Craftsman Truck Series. Don't forget Craftsman Truck Series. All races air on Fox Sports 1, maybe a Fox race or 2, but for the most part, Fox Sports 1. Big changes of its own, including an increase. They're going from 23 to 25 races next year. Biggest schedule that they have ever run as far as number of races. They start like the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series at Daytona and Atlanta. They will not, however, go to COTA. Instead, they'll skip that, and they'll skip Phoenix, waiting to go to Vegas. Vegas to Homestead, Miami, and then Martinsville. That'll get them through March. Into April, they race at Bristol, join the Xfinity Series on Easter weekend, as we noted, at Rockingham. Trucks will run Friday night, Xfinity racing Saturday. Easter Sunday is a full NASCAR off day. For the Truck Series, they take the rest of the month of April off. They get back to racing in May in Texas, Kansas, join the Cup Series at North Wilkesboro, then head to Charlotte and Nashville. In June, they go up to Michigan. They skip a week. In other words, they're not going to Mexico City. Then they go to Pocono, and then along with Rockingham, here's another eye-opener addition. They are going to Connecticut to Lime Rock Park for the first time for a top-level NASCAR touring series to go there. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Then they'll go to Indianapolis, Watkins Glen, and Richmond. Richmond will wrap up their regular season. For the playoffs, the Truck Series has the round of 10 at Darlington, Bristol, and New Hampshire. Round of 8.
The greatest version of, if you want to fuss about a schedule round in the playoffs, the greatest version of Hold My Beer ever.
Round of 8 for the Truck Series. They go to the Charlotte Roval. First time ever?
Yep.
Then they come to Talladega, go to Martinsville, and then wrap up on championship weekend out in Phoenix, just like Xfinity and Cup. All right. We've dealt with the Rockingham situation. We're happy that they're there. Again, buy tickets, go support it. Otherwise, Rockingham will be off the schedule in a fairly short order. Lime Rock Park in Connecticut. Who saw that coming?
Not this guy. Not this guy. Because it's
Am I wrong in hearing that Parker Kligerman or his family at least have some sort of a stake in Lime Rock Park, and that's partially what made this feasible?
You are correct.
Okay.
Parker Kligerman has a stake in Lime Rock Park.
Parker Kligerman himself. I couldn't remember whether it was him or his family.
They took, I think that date came from COTA. They just shifted it to there.
Yeah.
They added Michigan and added Rockingham to go from 23 to 25.
Yeah.
So, and they just took Darlington and moved Darlington from the spring event to the fall.
To the fall, Labor Day weekend. Mm-hmm. This also means that the Truck Series gets the most road course races I think they've ever had in a year. 3 of them, if you include the Charlotte Roval. You've also got Watkins Glen, and as we noted, Lime Rock Park.
Yep.
Wow. You're right, though. That round of 8 is going to be, it's an obstacle course. Charlotte Roval, Talladega, Martinsville. Oof.
And I got to rub my eyes on this one. This Truck Series and even ARCA as well, which they've shifted ARCA to Saturday mornings now. Mm-hmm. But way it used to be at Talladega, they're solidifying and doing their self in stating my case that they need to put lights up at that racetrack, because I'm still going to stick to my guns and stick to my word that even though they moved this race to Friday afternoon, and they're going to have it on Friday afternoon this year, starting at 4:00.
Right about the time the clocks change.
Yeah, right about the time the clocks change. And I don't see this race finishing distance.
We'll see. You might be right.
Even though they shortened the distance advertised from 250 to 225.
All that does is create more urgency.
10 laps less.
It creates more urgency. Here's another bad side of it. 2 years ago, the Craftsman Truck Series re-added the famed and historic Milwaukee Mile to the schedule. It's now gone again. Track Enterprises, which has promoted all stock car races at that track since 2019, just said that they could not come to terms with with NASCAR on a new deal to keep the series at the track. 2023 race was the first time that the Truck Series had raced there since 2009. They're gone. Yeah, we get Rockingham back. Yeah, we get Lime Rock Park. But again, Milwaukee Mile, I don't understand why this is such a massive hurdle for NASCAR.
I don't know, because when you and hopefully Mark will agree with me on this one, and I'm pretty sure he will. You have racing that you bring back to the state of Wisconsin, respectively. You had a short little stretch at Road America, then you got this short stretch at Milwaukee. Road America was fantastic from a crowd standpoint because people showed up to the race, because America's National Park of Speed. You got a 4-mile road course. You got more than enough places to watch the race. Milwaukee, the oldest operating racetrack in the United States, over 100 years.
Yeah. Somehow IndyCar can figure out how to run there, but NASCAR can't.
With IndyCar just coming back this year, and there's been a lot of complaints because there's only a very small amount of tickets sold to the IndyCar race. What happens, and I'm not going to say what happens with the fan standpoint or the fan spectator standpoint. When these sanctioning bodies, and it's evident with the state of Wisconsin to me, you get to the state of Wisconsin, you have a short little stretch there, and then poof, you're gone. Why can't something be there long term now?
Not sure.
It's puzzling.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher. There's no doubt. On to some other news. Lane Riggs, as we noted in the recap, claimed his first ever win in the Craftsman Truck Series competition. It's only his 23rd start in the series. He got to celebrating, as one might expect one would do after getting that first win. I mean, heck, you know this. You've been in this position as a driver. You have gotten that first win. The elation has got to be just not only is there a relief because, hey, you finally got that first win, but, try to describe that celebration. It's your first win.
Yeah, it's when I won my first one back in 2009, and it was actually on this very weekend in 2009, 15 years ago, when I won my first race. I pulled the start finish line, and the very first individual that I saw when I got out of the car was, at the time, my 70-year-old grandfather. And he's trying to jump on the track to come jump in the car with me before I can even get the car stopped.
Oh.
And I'm laughing. I'm laughing at him because I see his excitement and his joy.
Sure.
Then again, I'm like, finally done it.
Yeah, Riggs got out of the truck, got a little more than he bargained for. He ended up with a dislocated shoulder. Riggs was seen after the race, got out of the truck, jumping up and down, pumping his arms into the air while his team and his father rushed over to join the celebration. And when he finally settled down enough to talk to TV, he admitted, quote, "Dislocated my shoulder. Was celebrating so hard, but it was worth it." Luckily for him, he's got this weekend to recover. So we'll see what happens when the series returns. But dislocated shoulder, it's going to be painful for a little bit, but you can pop the thing back in and get back to racing.
Yeah. His crew members popped it back in on the track.
Yeah. So, got a little bit of time to recuperate and get over the initial pain, and he'll be back. I get the funny feeling you won't miss a race. Then there's Jason Burdett. Burdett, who left Legacy MC as a crew chief just last month, now has a new gig. He has joined Tricon Garage in the number 15 Toyota Tundra, driven by Tanner Gray. Burdett knows how to win in NASCAR, 18 wins to his credit while at Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series before he jumped up to Cup. This is going to be a nice addition, and for Tanner Gray, this might be the year that he needs to maybe settle himself down, because Tanner Gray has been a threat to get into the playoffs, but unfortunately, it goes back to that deal that we were talking about earlier with Ferrari. Inconsistency is his major problem.
It's a huge problem, because I think it's at the point where this is the first full-time year his little brother comes in, and his little brother has been
eating his
very much better than him on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah.
So I think it was more like, we got to do something.
Yep. Time to do it. All right, let's take a break here. When we come back, we'll switch over into the aforementioned Formula One. Haas F1 had their legal problems last week. Did they get them resolved? We'll tell you about that. And Silly Season claims another seat in Formula One as well. We'll deal with that and so much more, because we've also got Formula E, IndyCar, and I still have that tale about that short track in North Carolina that I want to get to. This is a situation where a small little track is fighting up against City Hall, or the state capitol in this case, and it turns out they may have just won. Stay close. We're not anywhere near done yet on this YouTube-only edition of CRN. right, short little break there, just to kind of get us a chance to clear our throats and get ready to roll here. And speaking of rolling, Formula One's got qualifying underway in Italy, from what I understand there, Matt.
Yes, they're in just now entering Q3. Q2 is over. The way the results are going from 20 down to 11 of how they went in Q1 and Q2. Zhou Guan Yu, Valtteri Bottas,
There's those Sauber guys again.
the new Williams pilot, Lance Stroll, Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, Kevin Magnussen, Daniel Ricciardo, and Fernando Alonso. That's the first two count out in rounds. So the final 10 is going to be Lewis Hamilton, Verstappen, Norris, Sainz, Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, Perez, Albon, and Hulkenberg.
Once again, Nico Hulkenberg out qualifying Kevin Magnussen.
Shocker.
Now we know why Kevin Magnussen will not be back in that Haas F1 car next year. And last week, speaking of Haas F1, we told you that Haas F1 was in danger of not being allowed to leave the Netherlands if they didn't pay off their 2021 and early 2022 sponsor, Uralkali, the money that they owed him for a portion of 2022 after Haas F1 had cut ties with the Russian energy company. That was after the country invaded Ukraine, and Uralkali had already paid money up front and said, hey, we need to get that money back because we didn't fulfill the contract. Well, as of Monday morning, the team was indeed allowed to finish packing up from the Sunday race and head out after they paid off the $9 million US. It had finally posted in a Uralkali account. And I say it that way because, again, this is that Russian entity thing. Haas had been ordered to pay the amount to their former title sponsor in March of 2022. Haas kept delaying the payment in part due to the difficulty in doing any business with any Russian entity. Haas officials said last Saturday the intent had been to pay, but they were first of all going to have to clear all court hurdles. Courts that had a say in this were not only in Switzerland, but the European Union, the United Kingdom, and the USA. So they had to work through those hurdles. Not only working that, they had to also figure out not just one middleman to be able to get the money there. Reports now claim that they did use a middleman as a financial institution going through the United Arab Emirates and then going to Uralkali. Again, that's just one report. Good night almighty. What a pain in the... But they'll be racing this weekend, as noted. They are there in Italy. The driver that many believe is going to be taking over the Mercedes ride that Lewis Hamilton's leaving at the end of the season did get his first chance to wheel an F1 car in earnest yesterday officially, and Mercedes driver Kimi Antonelli was put in the car for free practice session number 1. Antonelli is an Italian native who's now able to officially drive an F1, having just turned 18. And he's been tearing it up in Formula 2, following up on winning titles in Italian Formula 4, ADAC 4, Formula Regional Middle East, and in Formula Regional European Series over the past 2 years alone. In F2 this year, he's claimed both the sprint and race wins in Britain and in Hungary. So the question became Friday and Thursday, as they arrived in Italy, as it turned out, is he a shoo-in for taking over the seat being vacated by Hamilton? Well, Mercedes boss Toto Wolff said initially, quote, to see him drive out on Friday in FP1 in Monza, having an Italian kid in a competitive car, I think that'll be something that everybody in Italy can be proud of. Then we'll take it from there. Let's deal with that FP1 session first. It was kind of highs and lows. The high, his pace. Toto Wolff said the kid was on fire. Speed didn't necessarily show it, because he was dead last of all 20 drivers in that particular practice session. But it was speed enough to impress. Team boss Toto Wolff said Antonelli was not overwhelmed. And then he cracked up the car. As he was going through the high-speed Parabolica corner at Monza, he lost control, spun into the gravel trap, slammed into a barrier. Antonelli was able to walk away from the ride. He was taken to the track's medical center, checked, and released. All of that, apparently, didn't matter. Mercedes officials early this morning U.S. time announced that Antonelli is officially set to take over the Mercedes ride being vacated by Hamilton for 2025. The initial reports, while unconfirmed, seem to have this as a one-year only deal, but they will pair him with George Russell, so it'll be a pretty young team next year. George Russell being technically driver number 1, Antonelli all of 18, leading Mercedes, as Toto Wolff would like to hope, back to winning titles. How much faith do you have in this 18-year-old?
He's green. He's going to be awfully green. So
Sure.
don't set your expectations so high that we have another Nick DeVries or
Oof.
or a Logan Sargent situation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Talking about that crash yesterday, I seen data that was released. The impact was a 42G impact.
Ow. True. Oh, to be 18 again.
But once he got cleared from the medical center, he got back in his F2 car and qualified.
Okay. Yeah, and qualified pretty well, from what I understand.
He did.
Well, let me put you into the situation of your Lewis Hamilton. If you're Lewis Hamilton, are you willing to play mentor to Kimi Antonelli, or are you kind of taking a hands-off approach as you prepare to move to Ferrari?
I'm going to say hands off.
Okay.
Let the kid's got a good enough head on his shoulders and is well-rounded enough. He can handle his own.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say hands off.
So let me ask this a different way. If Kimi Antonelli comes to you as Lewis Hamilton, how hands-off are you?
I wouldn't answer any questions because I'm going to be racing side by side with him next year. I would answer any questions that he has and help him out and give him any pointers that he has.
Okay.
That's no problem.
So you're willing to help out if he comes to you. You're not necessarily going to go to him.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious as to how that might work. Well, let's get back to that Logan Sargent thing. Last Monday morning, things had to be just amazingly tense in the halls of Williams. They've already made it known Logan Sargent not going to be back with the team in 2025. And then he went out and had a major, you can read that as expensive, crash in the third practice session of the Dutch Grand Prix. And that just amped up the questions that have already been coming around about whether or not we were going to see Logan Sargent replaced before the season was done. And obviously, if they had wanted to do it on Monday, some nice options out there. One which would have given Red Bull a chance to see him in action as well, because Red Bull offered to loan them their primary development driver, expected Red Bull driver in waiting Liam Lawson. Christian Horner confirmed that was the case, but added he would want Lawson to remain as Red Bull's primary reserve driver if the need should arise. That apparently was something of a hurdle. Williams, through a spokesperson, only said, quote, "We are not going to get into speculation. There have been a lot of false rumors about Logan and his seat this year. As James Voles maintains, F1 is a meritocracy, but as a team, we are focused on delivering the best possible results for the upcoming races." Another name that came up was a possible replacement, Mercedes reserve driver, former Haas F1 driver Mick Schumacher. That made actually a little bit more sense since Mercedes supplies engines to Williams. Williams decided that doors number 1 and 2 were not a deal. And in order to make the deal, they went with door number 3. And door number 3 means Logan Sargent is out. They announced Tuesday he was out of the car effective immediately. Instead of going with Schumacher, instead of going with Lawson, they went with their own Williams Academy and Formula 2 driver Franco Colapinto to fill out the remainder of the year. Now, who the heck is Franco Colapinto? Well, he joined the Williams Academy in 2023. He's got one Formula One practice session in Britain. To his credit, he's all of 21 years old. He's in his second Formula 2 season, currently sits 6th in points. He's Argentinian, and normally this wouldn't be a big deal, but I'm going to note this because there's two things here, breaking the wall here. Keith, for example, on CRN Live on YouTube said, "Hey, we like trivia. Here's a little bit of trivia for you. Franco Colapinto is only the second Argentine to drive in Formula One since 2001. And he's only the second Argentinian-born driver to drive for Williams ever after Carlos Reutemann. Why? Well, think about this. Williams is a very British organization, based in Britain, founded in Britain by a gentleman named Sir Frank Williams. Very British. Argentina and Britain aren't exactly on the best of terms. Look back in history. I'll just give you one example. Falkland Islands. It is interesting that they chose him, but this might actually get the Argentinians to like one small aspect of Britain just a little bit better. God knows they don't like Top Gear.
No.
Why the change now? Logan Sargent, as we've been reporting and reiterated just a few moments ago, was set to be replaced anyway in 2025 by Carlos Sainz. He's had a rough time this year, constantly being outqualified, constantly being outraced by his teammate Alex Albon. And then following the August break, they bring in a major upgrade to this car for the Dutch Grand Prix, and Sargent goes out and kills it during the third practice session, where he came off a turn, hit the grass, slammed into the wall. Right after that, and this is what brought about the whole idea of him being replaced sooner rather than later. Right after the wreck, James Voles was witnessed going around to different teams on the paddock and talking to them about who might be available to them on short notice for this weekend's Italian Grand Prix at Monza. They reportedly just couldn't come to terms on borrowing Liam Lawson from Red Bull. Again, that hurdle being Liam Lawson needed to have his priorities being Red Bull. If they needed him, that meant Williams was going to be scrambling to find somebody else. Voles apparently didn't like that. Whether or not he actually went over and talked to Mercedes about Schumacher, we don't know. Formula1.com reports that Schumacher was never a consideration, and they ultimately chose to promote from within. Either way, this leaves, once again, Formula One after, we'll call it a season and a half, leaves Formula One without an American-born driver again. This goes back to what we were talking about with the whole Andretti Global thing. If you really want to be part of the United States of America, you've got to give the Americans somebody that they can root for, and they'll tend to root for somebody that's got the American flag flying on their helmet or somewhere on their fire suit more than they will somebody who was born in another country.
Yeah. That's... Yeah, he tore the car up, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
not the first time.
Motorsports.
Sure, it happens.
Things are going to happen.
And let's face it, I've watched that video of where he was coming off that curve, and I could tell you right now that it would be very, very easy to overdrive the curve enough to the point where as you're starting to go down the straight, you don't have all four wheels back on the asphalt. And if you hit the grass on a track that is banked like Zandvoort is,
you're gone.
You're gone. Now, could Logan Sargent maybe have figured out a way to have gotten better control of the car coming off the corner? Yeah, maybe. But here's the thing. Any of the other 19 drivers up there could have easily found themselves in the same situation.
They could have. And with F1, where they're losing some of their lore. Well, they've lost a lot of their lore. Let's say that.
Yeah, I would say
it's to where we've got these people they're high on, they're bringing up that goes through the ranks and earn their way up to the top, and then they struggle a little bit, and we got to change up. We got to do that. They struggle a little bit. They're not giving them adequate time to develop. You can't fully develop yourself going from an F2 car that I think is not even 500 horsepower to an F1 car that is nearly 1,000.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, there's a major step up. I mean, you could certainly talk about a difference between an Xfinity and a Cup Series car, but there's a lot more similarities, I think, between an Xfinity and a Cup Series car. Even now, more similarities, maybe even so, than an F2 to an F1 car.
I'm going to say from an overall aero perspective, the similarities. But from a technicality standpoint, on a horsepower level, Xfinity cars are bigger motors than Cup cars.
Yeah, it's like Venus and Mars.
Yeah, it's like Venus and Mars. But the level, like from a horsepower standpoint, like going from F2 to F1 is like going from a crate engine street stock series and dirt up to a super late model in dirt,
That's a
making
big
that
jump.
jump.
It's a big jump.
That is a monstrous jump. Monstrous jump.
Big
Because
jump.
and I'm not bashful to tell anybody this, and I'll say it all day long. When I started my career, I did not start in the 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder series, stock, pony stock series, or even street stocks. I started out in big motor, big tire cars.
Mhm.
And then what the old at the track that I started out at, the old division called the Thunder Car Series.
Okay.
Street stock style car bodies. The rules package was wide, but the baseline of it was street stock style cars, full frame cars, those type of bodies with gigantic engines in it with wide tires. I started out in that. That's all I know. I had an opportunity to test a car for a guy. He wanted me to drive it and shake it down for him because he just had got the car.
Yep. I was
said,
there.
"Sure."
I remember this.
It's not that one. It's
Oh.
not that one. This is a while back.
Oh, okay.
That what you're talking about is example number 2.
Yeah.
This one he had. The engine was a basically a stock 350 that had been worked on just a little bit with a hydraulic cam with hydraulic lifters. Now, an engine I had was solid lift cam, solid lifters with a gigantic carburetor on it. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
All right. That engine that he had probably put out, it was barely touching, I'm going to say barely cracking 500. The engine that I had and I was used to driving was pushing 675 to 700.
It's noticeable.
I had to learn throttle control, and I learned throttle control, and I knew what I needed to do and what I needed to use to keep my respected car hooked to the ground.
Mhm.
All right, I get in this car to test it, and I cannot hit my ever loving you know what in a 40-acre field. And I'm going, dear God, what is this? I'm like, what am I doing? And I'm trying to use the same throttle control. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Got to reset your mind.
I got to reset my mind. I got to reset my hands. I got to reset my feet to use the braking pattern, the throttle pattern to try to get this car to drive right with a nearly 200 horsepower difference in engines.
Yeah.
Fast forward to last year when I stepped into the modified and drove that modified in Clanton, Alabama for that gentleman last year, that friend of mine. We're going from that engine, we're going from one that's barely pushing 400, and I'm used to nearly 700, a 300 horsepower difference. With a car with half the horsepower and tires that are half as wide is what I'm used to.
Sure. Makes a big difference.
I was like, okay, this is about to be bad.
Totally
different. It came to me quicker than I thought it was going to, but I was still felt lost in it because I'm like, okay, this car is doing this when I'm used to feeling the car do that at the same point using the same throttle. Let's use the term same throttle tracing that I'm used to doing with my car. So when you're going from these lower horsepower cars to the bigger horsepower cars, it can be a challenge. But from my standpoint, going from a bigger horsepower car to something lower is more challenging.
Okay. And that was going to be my next question.
It's more challenging.
Okay. So Logan Sargent just hasn't been able to figure out how to get over that hurdle, though.
Has not been given a fair enough time to develop himself and evolve himself into these much larger, much higher horsepower, and much different driving cars than what he's used to.
Yeah. But welcome to the world of sports now.
Yep.
It's players in all different aspects of sports. And truth be told, it's the head coaches and the GMs and the team bosses and all that kind of stuff and the crew chiefs and all that. They're all in the same hot seat.
Finally wrapping up qualifying from Monza.
Go for it.
You have a McLaren front row lockout with Lando Norris pole sitter and Piastri outside pole. You've
If that
got
holds, it's going to tighten things up even more.
Russell, Leclerc, Sainz, Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Albon, and Hulkenberg finalize your top 10.
Wow. All right, then. One other thing that you might be interested in checking out tomorrow during the race, because Alpine employees are set to be doing something of a silent protest this weekend at the Italian Grand Prix. About 100 workers from the engine program are set to be in attendance at the Italian Grand Prix, all of them slated to wear white t-shirts that have the Alpine logo on them and holding and wearing black armbands. All of this will be in protest of the announced plans to shutter the engine program after the 2025 season. Remember, we talked about this on the show some weeks ago. Alpine's already in talks with Mercedes about 2026 and beyond about becoming a customer team of theirs. A statement released from the Alpine Racing Works Council said that they'll also have banners that they're going to show throughout the race that will have a, quote, clear but non-aggressive message, unquote. Oh, that ought to be interesting. Where they are trying to make the company keep the engine program alive. Alpine itself released a response statement that said, in part, quote, we are aware of some activities planned this weekend from staff. The transformation project is still being evaluated. No decision has been taken yet by Alpine's management. Stated that talks with the engine department will continue. So, in other words, they're trying to say that the door is open for the engine department to continue. That's funny. Everything else that they'd set up to this point seemed to make us believe that door was shut.
Yeah. You would have thought. I don't know.
And, you know, I get it. There's a money output here. I know it. There's a money output that Alpine and Renault, their parent company, have to put out to do the engine department. But how long have you been a supplier of engines in Formula One, and you're now making this decision? That baffles the mind.
Yeah, it doesn't add up.
All right, let's turn our attention over to IndyCar. Series heading to the Milwaukee Mile for this weekend's doubleheader event. 2 moves made by teams. IndyCar made a move themselves, though, first. First, IndyCar, based upon the somewhat questionable restart at the end of the race at Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway, has clarified the restarts. In NASCAR, we're used to this. We've seen this at every single racetrack that we've gone to and seen live on television. We're all familiar with the Geico restart zone, right? This is where you have an area where on the track and on the wall, you have lines painted to denote the beginning of it, lines painted to denote the end of it, and on the pit wall, you have the big blue with white lettered Geico area that says, this is your restart zone. This is where you fire off. You can fire off at the beginning, you can fire off at the end, you can fire off in the middle, but you have to fire off in here, period. IndyCar looked at that and said, okay. So they looked at Milwaukee Mile, went out there, and with the help of the people at Milwaukee Mile, painted a new line on the track that marks the end of the restart zone, not the beginning. They stated this will also be done at Nashville Superspeedway in a couple of weeks for the Music City Grand Prix that will end the season and officially crown a champ. So, okay, at least we don't have any question about where in IndyCar this weekend or at Nashville in a couple of weeks. We don't have any confusion about where that restart zone ends. Now we only have a question about officially, where does it begin?
If I remember right, the IndyCar restart zone is any point in turn 4, the leader has discretion to fire.
Okay.
It's just you have to fire and be gone before that certain point.
Right. And now that point is much better defined. You have a line on the track says must fire by here.
Yep.
So what do they do if somebody doesn't fire by then? Do they wave it off? Or do they just throw the green flag and go, whatever?
That's a question that I would like to ask Aaron Likens, the chief starter. What do you do? What do you do? What is going to happen if you get to that point and leader has not fired by then, do you wave it off and do a complete restart? Or do you send that leader to the back? Do you start it and let it go and say, hope the best for you? Or what?
Yeah.
I've seen and been a part of restarts at various tracks that have went all 3 ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's frustrating because you don't know what to expect, when to expect it.
Yeah. It seems like almost from racetrack to racetrack, it changes.
Yep.
And that's why NASCAR put in the Geico restart zone.
Sure.
As for the team changes, Catherine Legg continues to be the driver of choice for Dale Coyne with Rick Ware Racing. That's the number 51 entry. She's one of only 5 drivers that is going to be in the field this weekend that is actually raced at the Milwaukee Mile. She seems to have the inside line to finish out the season in the car at Nashville as well. And then there's Christian Rasmussen. We talked about him. He's a Rookie of the Year contender, but unfortunately, he's also a part-timer. And I say that because he's driving for Ed Carpenter Racing in the number 20 car. The 20 car is the one where Ed Carpenter drives the oval tracks, but Christian Rasmussen in this case drives the road and the street courses, which means that any rookie driver who's up for the Rookie of the Year award that is in the 20 car probably not going to win Rookie of the Year because you're going to miss out on 5-6 races a year. But in this case, Ed has decided to take himself out of the car, not only for this weekend and the doubleheader at the Milwaukee Mile, but the final race of the year at Nashville, and is giving those races to Christian Rasmussen.
Not a bad move.
Not a bad move at all. Ed Carpenter said this, quote, "First off, this was a very difficult decision for me to make. I want to make it clear that this is not a retirement announcement, but the reality is I have not performed to the level that I expect of myself for the team. Christian tested at Gateway, Worldwide Tech Raceway, prior to the race, showed me that he deserves this expanded opportunity. He's also had such a strong performance during the month of May that he has earned this chance to continue his development. I'm excited to watch him finish out the season strong for the number 20 crew and the entire ECR team. You're the owner of the team, but you're also a driver. To have the self-awareness enough to know that your team is better off without you behind the wheel and might be better off with this young kid behind the wheel, that's a big step to take. And it's a big realization on the part of Ed Carpenter.
It's a massive step to take. Very, 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 very massive step to take, because it means you got to look at yourself in the mirror and go, what needs to happen for this team to pick up? Do I need to step out of the seat? Do I need to stay in the seat?
Yeah.
What do I need to do? So that's a huge thing to do.
I know that Ed said this is not a retirement announcement, but with that kind of realization and reality on his part, that tends to lead me to think that it might be closer than even Ed Carpenter would like to admit.
Yes, it is very much closer than it's very much closer than it seems.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate because, I mean, he'll be missed. There's no doubt about it. But again, it takes a big man to understand your limitations and when you need to step away when you have such a vested interest in the team as a whole.
Yep. And this one right here, dealing with Nashville for IndyCar specifically, I need to turn the comments on where I can watch it, because a little, if this holds that what this little birdie chirped at me last week,
mm-hmm.
There's going to be a very astounding ovation for the invocation that comes up at Nashville.
We're hoping this comes true.
We hope, gosh almighty, I hope this comes true, because it will be a blast from the past.
Yes, it would be. All right, we're going to take a break here as well. And when we come back, we'll wrap everything up. We got Formula E, we got NHRA. As promised, I'm going to tell you about that short track up in North Carolina. But let's go ahead and take a break right here. And when we come back, we'll wrap up this extended edition of CRN Live on YouTube. Thank you very much for sticking with us. We started a little late. We're going to end even a little bit later. Enjoy it. We'll be right back. right, welcome back in. Steve West along with Matt Nicholson, producer John Meyer sitting over here to my right, making sure that everything runs as smoothly as we can, considering we're doing this from our house on the first day of college football season officially.
How's this?
I don't count week 0. Week 0. It's another thing entirely. That's a let's put it this way. The whole idea behind week 0 in college football, or in high school for that matter, has been a bugaboo for me on my daily Monday through Friday show. I don't understand it. It's not like you play the game in week 0 and your record's still 0-0. You're either 1-0 or you're 0-1. Wouldn't that make it week 1?
Yeah, you need to call it either week 1 and extend it to week 14,
Plural.
whatever.
How's this?
That's true. We are in our separate houses because
2 different locations.
Yeah, we are. So
It's a bugbear.
we've had some technical problems, but we have overcome them, and we appreciate you sticking with us through them all. All right, Formula E. Silly season continues. They're only a couple of months from preseason testing for the upcoming 11th season. McLaren has finally settled on their new driver pairing. They're keeping Sam Bird. They're going to pair him with a kid by the name of Taylor Bernard. Bernard gets the call from his role as the team's reserve driver from last season, who filled in for the injured Bird at Monaco and Berlin. He claimed 14th in Monaco and then 10th and 8th in the Berlin doubleheader, so he actually acquitted himself kind of nicely. Meant that he scored championship points those last 2 races, and at the age of 19, he is a trivia question answer. He is, at this moment in time, the youngest driver in the decade-long history of Formula E to ever score championship points. Does have plenty of racing experience for his short time on Earth. He only got into single-seater open-wheel racing, though, in 2020. He adapted quickly, became the 2022 ADAC Formula 4 runner-up, backed that up with a runner-up finish in the points in 2023 Formula Regional Middle East, which was also his debut season in Formula 3 when he got a win at Spa-Francorchamps. Oof, that's not an easy track to claim a win at. In addition to his reserve role with McLaren, this year he's been racing part-time in Formula 2 for AIX Racing. So at this time, with that seat filled, there's only 2 more seats to be filled amongst the 11 Formula E teams. DS Penske has yet to find a driver to pair with Jean-Eric Verne. This is after Stoffel Van Dorn exited and went to Maserati at the end of the year. And then there's the cellar-dwelling ABT Cooper team. They watched Nico Muller take off for greener pastures at Andretti Global. They have yet to find his replacement that'll join up with Lucas Degrassi, the former title winner, as the team becomes ABT Lola for the upcoming year. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what happens. Would love to show you this, but if you can go back and look this up, Tony Stewart Racing heads to one of Smoke's favorite cities to race in, his own backyard, Indianapolis, this weekend. They're contesting the U.S. Nationals, and they're bringing in a special paint scheme that honors the Dodge Performance brand Direct Connection. The brand celebrates their 50th anniversary with a classic patriotic look. Dodge officials are thrilled with the team. They're thrilled with the look. Matt McAleer, who's the CEO of the Dodge brand, said, quote, Dodge couldn't ask for a better brand ambassadors than racing legend Tony Stewart and 4-time NHRA world champion Matt Hagan, carrying the throwback Direct Connection 50th anniversary colors at the NHRA U.S. Nationals. It's the most prestigious race on the NHRA schedule. As for Tony Stewart, he said, quote, it's a testament that 50 years after the introduction of Direct Connection, the Dodge Performance Parts brand still stands strong as the go-to source for go-fast parts in both the street and the strip. Stewart added, quote, I'm very excited to have 2 really cool paint schemes on both mine and Matt's cars. The U.S. Nationals is the biggest race of the year for drag racing. It's a home race for us personally. I put a lot of pressure on us to win for Dodge and for all of our sponsors. The focus is just going to have a great weekend and trying to win that Wally trophy. There you go.
You briefly see it right
There's
there.
producer John right there. He's producer John's got the look up there. And let's face it, that's an iconic look right there.
That when I first seen that look, it immediately made me think of Don Perdon.
Sure.
It immediately made me think of that.
Yeah. So that's the look. Matt Hagan's car on your left, Tony Stewart driving for his wife, Leah Pruitt, in the top fuel entry, the one on the right. And here's the thing. For those of you that are sitting there going, well, Tony Stewart's a stock car driver, right? So how good is he really? You might want to look at the standings. Tony Stewart going into this weekend is 6th in the top fuel standings.
He's done nothing but climb, too.
He just keeps getting better. And this is Indianapolis. You know, he at another track where he's quote unquote familiar, Sonoma. Granted, dragway versus road course, I get it, but he got all the way to the finals at Sonoma. Now he's going to Indianapolis, his backyard, the place that means maybe more to him than just about any other place out there.
And he in the finals of Sonoma, he beat Antron Brown out of the hole.
Yes, he had a quicker
But Antron Brown just pulled away from him.
Yeah. So, don't count Tony out. He might just jump up and surprise a couple of people.
I think he'll slip up and get one this year.
Yeah. Speaking of surprising some people, this weekend also is Swedish Top Fuel pilot Ida Zetterstrom, and I believe her second actual event. She claimed the 2023 FIA Top Fuel World title and has now moved to the U.S. to take on the premier drag racers. So what prompted her to make the move? She was interviewed recently and said, quote, moving here was a big decision, but it felt easy because it's something that I've been working towards for years. Being here close to everything we need has been refreshing and it's made our work much easier. She continued, I feel like I'm living my American dream. I think what I've had to learn most is basically just small stuff. What food you like, what brands or stuff in the grocery store. I feel like I'm 16 or 17 moving from home and trying to learn how to go grocery shopping by myself. She said that she would have moved to the U.S. earlier if she could have, but said that while it's been her goal for years, she said, quote, in 2022, I still felt like I had a lot to learn as a driver. We had won an event. We had set the new European record, had a strong third place finish, but I still felt like there was still a lot as a driver that she needed to get to understand first. Then in the off season between 2023 and 2024, she moved here. From February to now, she added that it's been being kind of like in the middle of a tornado. They've had to hire staff, cram all the prep work in to make her debut, which she did in Minnesota, and she opened up eyes. How many eyes did she open? She opened up eyes because in the first round, she bested four-time champion Steve Torrence in a whole shot win in round one. That's not an easy thing to do.
No.
She had a pass.
Close.
Yep, she had a pass in round two. Unfortunately, admits she made a mistake, red lighted in the semifinal round that ended her initial run. So if she can keep that up, I would say watch out for her. She may be a power for some years to come. Again, she's in her early 20s. She might be around for quite some time.
For sure. For sure.
All right, two more bits. First of all, remember the Superstar Racing Experience, the old SRX series? Yeah. Remember, that was supposed to have just wrapped up its third season. But you might remember earlier this year, about 6 months ago, they called it off, said that there were reports out there that the series and its assets had been sold off to the Skip Barber Racing School. Let's pump the brakes on that, shall we? SRX officials, whoever they are now, released a statement on Monday of this week that read this, quote, on March 13th, 2024, Anthony DeMonte executed an asset purchase agreement on behalf of DMS Apex Holding LLC, doing business as Skip Barber Racing, to purchase the SRX Superstar Racing Experience Series. The parties agreed they would close the transaction on April 30th, 2024. Contrary to that, and without Superstar's consent, Skip Barber Racing and DeMonte issued a press release falsely stating they had acquired SRX. DeMonte and Skip Barber have failed to pay any amount of the purchase price or otherwise fulfill their promise close to the transaction. Consequently, contrary to their false public statements, Skip Barber Racing did not purchase and does not own SRX or any of the series assets. We have filed a lawsuit in Rowan County, North Carolina against Skip Barber Racing and Mr. DeMonte, seeking full damages for their breach of agreement. Meanwhile, and this is the most notable thing for me, meanwhile, we will continue to explore strategic options as it relates to the future of SRX. The lawsuit, okay, yeah, I could kind of foresee that coming if you feel breach of contract. Future of the SRX. I'm going to give a cautionary tale to SRX, whoever they are. Open letter right here on CRN on August 31st at 10:33 a.m. Central Time.
Timestamp.
Your cautionary tale should be the original United States Football League. If you remember them, about 30 years ago now, they ran 3 seasons in the spring and then decided that they were going to run from the spring to the fall and directly compete with the National Football League. But instead of going ahead and playing in the spring of the next year and then going and playing more in the fall, they said, we're not going to play at all. And we're going to file an antitrust suit against the NFL and the networks. Because at that point in time, ABC, NBC, and CBS, there was no Fox. Remember that. There was no CW. Just those three all had contracts with the NFL. So the USFL files an antitrust suit against the NFL. One of the reasons why the jurors, after the fact, said they found yes in favor of the USFL, but for the grand total of $1. They said it was because the USFL stopped playing. You have a lot more value as an entity when you are still in action than you do if you're idle. SRX is a lot in this case like the USFL. ABC had a deal on the table with the USFL to continue to broadcast their games in 1986 for a not untidy sum of $220 million. Contract on the table, ready to be signed. We will air your games on our network and pay you $220 million in 1986 dollars. ESPN, now affiliated with ABC, had a deal to run the SRX on Thursday nights in a season that, again, would have just about wrapped up, what, a week, 2 ago? Tops?
Yeah.
And you had 5 of your 6 season races already planned out, and you pulled the plug. And you want to know why the value of your entity fell off the table? It's because you stopped racing. Continue to operate as the entity your value maintains, and then you can go sell from a position of strength. When you stop operating, you're no longer in a position of strength. SRX, I loved you, but you did this to yourselves. You shot yourselves in the foot.
Bang.
And not with a 22, but with a blunderbuss. On the flip side of this, I don't think we've ever in the history of the show, in all of its forms and all of its homes, ever talked about Alamance, North Carolina's Ace Speedway. Ring a bell to you there, Matt?
Yep.
Okay. I know you know the track. Have we talked about it? I don't think so.
I don't think we have, no.
But this story, this deserves to be told. And I honestly believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to some of the idiotic rules regarding the COVID pandemic. Let's take you back to 2020, shall we? The track was briefly closed for defying a statewide order regarding crowd sizes at events set by North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, a Democrat. The track sued just a couple of weeks after the then State Health and Human Services Secretary, Mandy Cohen, enforced that order. The Court of Appeals panel ruled in 2022 that the track could indeed sue. When the state appealed that, the state Supreme Court got the case. The justices, just a couple of weeks ago, unanimously sided with the track. The Supreme Court's ruling read that the track's attorney argued correctly that the state of North Carolina plausibly infringed upon the rights of the people to, quote, enjoy the fruits of their labor, unquote, and that the state conducted, quote, unlawful selective enforcement, unquote, in its order against the track. This puts the case back into the lower courts to be heard and judged as to many or any and the amount of any damages. Going back to May of 2020, Governor Cooper's administration issued an executive order that placed, get this, a 25-person cap on all outdoor gatherings. Now, here's the thing. We've been to several tracks, not just NASCAR tracks, not just Indycar tracks. We've been to several tracks. And Ace Speedway is a local track. Talladega Short Track, Knoxville Raceway up in Iowa, for example, just to give a couple. We've been to these tracks. These are tracks that seat anywhere from, what, 2,500 to 5,000-6,000, maybe even a little bit more.
I'm going to say from a short track standpoint, the ones that I've been to, anywhere from probably, I'm going to say from 500
Okay.
on a local dirt level to, I'm going to say upwards of 10,000 on the level of Five Flags.
Okay. 25 people at a racetrack. 25. Even if your capacity is only 500, 25 people ain't going to pay the bills. Let's just be real.
Nope.
Ace Speedway ignored that order, and for their first race of the 2020 season, allowed more than 2,500 ticketed fans into the gates.
I remember seeing pictures of all this, and it was crazy how far they were lined up getting in.
Yeah.
They got the number 25 there.
They got the number 25. Nice, John.
True.
ACES operator Robert Turner was public in his opposition to the order and said he would continue to be in open defiance of the state, and the track would be open to any and all fans who wanted to come. When Governor Cooper ordered the Alamance County Sheriff's Department to intervene, they refused. So state officers then had to get involved. The track is one of 3 establishments that's filed similar suits in North Carolina. There are 2 bars not affiliated with each other or the track that also filed suit against the state for having to close, while restaurants that served adult beverages were allowed to remain open in violation of the state constitution. I give all this, number 1, yes, because it is a racetrack, but I give it number 2 because I pray this is the tip of the iceberg against all of those foolish morons who felt like they were leading their state or their city or their county or their town or whatever burg they happen to be elected to be leader of, felt like they were leading them to safety, but in truth, you weren't doing squat.
No, it's just, I'm just going to call it for what it's worth. Freaking out over a common head cold.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I get it. There are some people that did pass away due to complications from COVID. Those are people who had what they called, they had extenuating circumstances. I'll just put it that way. There were other aspects of it. Those who passed away from COVID and nothing else but COVID, less than 0.1% of the populace who passed away. All the others had some sort of other kind of morbid problem that caused COVID to be deadly to them.
Yep.
That's it. That's the way it is. This is, I honestly believe, the beginning, not the end of a whole bunch of lawsuits coming against some of these entities that did like what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here again on this YouTube-only edition of CRN Live. Next week, we will be back live. I'm not exactly sure what time. I'll get the information. I'll make sure to post it on our Twitter, X, Twix, and our Facebook pages and make sure that you guys know. But I'm getting the funny feeling, based upon what we understand, with a 1 o'clock kick from Georgia, which is our station is an affiliate of the Georgia Bulldogs, with a 1 o'clock kick and a 4-hour pregame show. That would mean we'd have to be off the air at 9. So maybe we back it up. Instead of 8 to 10, we do 7 to 9. We'll keep you posted on it. And until then, have a fantastic week. We'll talk to you Wednesday on Crossed Flags and next Saturday in some way, shape, or form right here on CRN. See ya.